All right. Welcome to the Build Your Village podcast. This is where we talk about raising kids and consciousness. My name is Sarah Wayne, and today my guest is Alison Clayshulte. So, Alison, thank you for being here. I'm going to share a little bit about this amazing woman. She is a board certified in holistic nutrition and a certified nutrition consultant. She's been working one-on-one with clients and teaching cooking classes for the past 3 years. Alison is a professional member of the National Association of Nutrition Professionals, NANP, and she's multi-passionate. And before becoming a certified nutrition consultant, she had an assortment of professional roles, such as pastry cook, food systems event planner, food blogger, marketing analyst, and more. Her work today is the culmination of both her professional background and her personal journey. She is passionate about using whole foods, nutrition, and healthy living to support women in their fertility journey. So I'm really excited to have Alison on the show today. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining in on this conversation. I want us to start with getting into what your mama situation looks like. So if you could just share with everybody what it looks like for you to be a mom, how many kids you have, what your situation is with them right now, how old they are.
Sure, yeah. So I have 2 kids. They are identical twin girls who are almost 7.5. So, and I live with them and my husband, and we co-parent and together right now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming because of the situation, they're not, because right now we're just at the end of this shelter in place order that we've all gone through for the last few months. So you've been homeschooling them, I assume, or that's been kind of.
Yeah, we've been homeschooling up and through the end of May. So from the middle of March through May, we were homeschooling them. And now it's summertime, but it looks very different than the summer that we all had planned.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're making it work, and we're having days of fun and days of not so much fun, and getting through it together. We've definitely come together in ways that we hadn't before as a family.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear from parents who are having to adapt to a whole unexpected situation. And I'm just curious what you have found has really helped you adapt in the situation with your kids. What have you needed to shift or implement to make things easier for yourself?
Yeah, no, that's really good. I mean, one of the things that has become so important is just being sure to be really real with them. Yeah. And if I'm struggling, I'm very much sharing that I'm struggling. And if they're struggling, we're talking about it. And just knowing that there are challenges and that we're going to get through this. And it's not necessarily going to be the easiest thing or that what we all had planned, but that we can get through it. And by coming together and, working together as a family, that we will get through it together. Definitely.
That's such a powerful, important message that it is that I think really unifying as a family is what needs to happen. That's, very critical to help people feel that they have support, right? That they're being supported through this, even though it feels like they are uncertain about what's going on around them.
Yeah, for sure. And we've learned some things over the last few months on what really works and what kind of support they need and what kind of support we need. And we've learned to really reach out to people when we feel like we need more support and more just both guidance in terms of parenting and homeschooling, and as well as support from family and how we can get that from afar, basically.
Nice. That's great. I'm curious to know, when you started this whole journey being a mom, what did that look like for you as far as, was it easy going into it? Were you prepared? Was it challenging? Because I know we all have our initial story of being in that transition of going from not being a mom to being a mom. And that is, I think, a really pivotal point for people to realize like a lot changes in that period. So for you, what changed in your life during that period?
Oh my goodness, so many things changed. It was like a 180. I don't feel like my life looks anything. In some ways it does, and in some ways it looks so different than
Mm-hmm.
what it did before, right? And I think that's true for so many women. But what was it easy going into it? No. I had a pretty non-eventful or uneventful pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
But then once when my girls were born, they were about 6 weeks early, and I didn't have any thought that was going to happen. And so I thought I was going to have this time to really set up for them and nest and create their room. And I just had this vision of what I thought it was going to look like. And none of that turned out to be what it actually looked like or how things went. And I remember I had this picture in my mind that once I had a baby, I would like go hiking with it, and we would go on these nice long walks together. And then I had 2 babies, and I couldn't just strap one to my, to my chest and go for these long, beautiful hikes, because now I had 2, and it just didn't look anything like I expected it to look.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely took us, I think, some time to transition into finding our rhythm and finding what worked out for us as both me and them, and then also just as a family and how we put those pieces together. But was it an easy transition? I don't think by any means it was easy or gentle.
Yeah, it's also being thrown into it with an extra kid. It's one thing to come into it with being a new mom with 1 child, but 2 is, I can imagine, it's just there's just a whole new world that you can't understand unless you're in it. And I'm curious, like, if you had your village around you, did you have your support around you to really feel that you got what you needed, or did you have to figure that out, and were you kind of figuring,
Gosh, Matt, can you come take her?
Yeah, so what kind of support did you have going into being a new mom with twins?
So it's funny. I just didn't really even know what I needed kind
Mm-hmm.
of going into it. Thankfully, where we live, there are twin group communities. And so I had gone to a couple meetings that you can go before you have your babies
Mm-hmm.
and just start to learn and meet people that have been through it before, and giving you ideas for how to set up systems and how to create space for you and for them and what things might look like.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of had that going forward. I also reached out to my family. We don't have any family that lives locally. And I reached out and asked people if they would be willing to come and help with the babies. And so my dad came and stayed with us for the first month,
Oh, wow.
and cooked for us and took care of us, and helped a lot. My husband had a week off once the girls came home, so it wasn't very much time.
No.
So it was really nice. I think for the first 6 months of their lives, I probably was in my house every other week. I had some different family member. And it was so funny because some of them were better at other things. And sometimes they would show up and we would say, okay, what are you good at? And some were good at taking care of babies, and some were good at cooking, and some were good at cleaning. And we just kind of ran with it and figured out how to make it work,
Yeah.
um, with these people that would just come in and out of our lives. And I have such fond memories of that time, and such pictures. Like, I have pictures of my girls with all these different members of their family who came to support us, which was really cool.
Yeah, that's really sweet, especially if they weren't even living locally. You got to have that experience.
No, nobody was local. And at the time we lived in a house that thankfully had like an in-law unit
Mm-hmm.
underneath it. And so they had their own space, and they could just come upstairs and be with us, and then go back downstairs and have their own space. And so, it's amazing how things work out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you had to reach out though. I mean, you really have to ask for that support. And with going through that experience, did you find there were some certain resources or tools or things that you couldn't have lived without, that you, going back, like looking back, you would say, okay, if you're a new mom with twins or just a new mom in general, here is what I would highly suggest for you in some realm?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of resources, asking for help was a big one that I had to learn. I am not somebody that usually asks for help.
Yeah.
And so just reaching out and saying, I need this or I need that. It's something I'm still learning, but it's definitely important.
Mm-hmm.
Also for me, finding a good support group was really important. And I struggled with infertility myself. And so I had reached out on my infertility journey and found a support group there. And I knew how much of an impact it made and how much it gave me to
Mm-hmm.
just help continue on the journey. And so when I had the girls, I did reach out and I would go to this twin group. And I have my closest friends today are moms that I met from this support group.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with that, I couldn't have gotten through, right? Without them, I think. I mean, I could have, but it would have been much rougher.
Yeah.
And then one of the books that I love is that I still look at sometimes, is this book called Mama Zen. I don't
Uh-huh.
know if you've seen this one before,
Mm-hmm.
but I have so many like tags at the bottom of just quotes or support when I would read it at night or when the girls were down or whenever, and I could find something, I would find a little nugget that would just lift me up and tell me it's going to be okay. You're going to get through this. It doesn't have to be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to be able to get through. And, before the girls were before the girls were 3, neither of them ever slept through the night. And so I was just tired and not knowing how I was going to be able to make all of this work. And this book was like my lifeline.
Mm.
So between those kind of resources, the book and my girlfriends, that's how we made it through.
Yeah. I love the title of that book, Mama's Done. uh,
Yeah.
that's really what you're saying is so important, that you have to do the reach out. Sometimes we don't always have the network set up for ourselves. It's not always like there. You have to go find it. And I think that can be scary for some if we're not used to asking for help, right? And it's interesting you say you're not great at asking for help. So obviously, when you're in this position, you kind of get forced into being more, I guess you could say, humble about just asking for support. But would you say that there are some areas that you had to actually kind of look at how you were parenting? Like, because I think we come into this idea of thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to be as a parent, or I'm going to, be this way with my kids. And every kid is so different, right? Like I have a very unique daughter with her special needs. And so even though I thought I knew how I would take her through her life in some aspect, it's like, it's not any of that, right? So I'm curious if there are things that you had to adjust with how your kids are, how they developed, and maybe even things you inherited as you were parented and decided that maybe that doesn't work for your kids. Is there anything that stands out around that?
Um, well, just like off the bat, it was so interesting because I'm an introvert and like I said, I don't really ask for help and I don't go out of my way to talk to people just on the street or out and about. And I automatically, as a mom of twins, everything's bigger. You have a bigger stroller, you take up more space, they're louder. And so right away, I had to start. People just had so many questions and they wanted to look at them and they wanted to talk to them. And so I was really pulled out of my little bubble very early on in my mama journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so it served me well. I mean, it served me well going forward, but it's not something I grew up with. My parents are both introverts. We kind of stayed in our own, not like bubble, but just we did our own thing and we kind of went down our own path. And it wasn't necessarily like we were part of something bigger. And I feel like my girls, both because they were twins and then their personalities, they are just these bright, beautiful, vivacious beings that are not quiet. They are noisy and they are loud and they like to talk to everyone. And so they have just kind of like pushed me into talking to more people, into being part of a community that I might have just it would have been easier for me to kind of retreat back into myself, into what's comfortable for me. And they push me to not do that.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing how kids can be your catalyst. I feel that they may not always be what you expect, but it's always what you need. There's like this experience of bringing you into your next level of evolution. I feel that with the kids that come through, that's really their purpose in some ways. So now, knowing you as a nutritionist, Alison and I have actually known each other for a few years, and went to the same nutrition school. Did you go to Bowman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did go to Bowman. That's right. Yeah. And so you work with people more closely around nutrition now than I do. And I'm curious to know, what would you suggest to a new mom with looking at that? Maybe some people don't realize how important nutrition is. Like how important do you think that it is for someone to look at that when they're thinking about getting pregnant, or even breastfeeding and along their journey, teaching their kids about nutrition and taking care of themselves?
I mean, it's so important. I can't express how important it is enough. That's kind of how I found nutrition, actually, was on my fertility journey, was looking for support and how I could support myself in a way that I felt like I could control. Food is something that I could control and I could learn about and use to take better care of myself, to support myself. And so that's how I got started down this path. And then when I was breastfeeding, I had to really dial in on how to feed myself in a way that would support not only feeding me, but also support these 2 growing babies that I'm trying to feed. And I came up with special recipes and special tools that I use to help with that. Mm-hmm. And then going into teaching them about food. I mean, I grew up in a way where food was embraced, but it was like certain things were more embraced than others. And I didn't want that for my kids. I wanted it to be freedom and for them to love everything and not have any kind of points, I guess, around food where they were scared of it, or they didn't think it was for them, or they didn't want to try something because, I have seen people say, "Oh, don't try that. You're not going to like that." And that's a trigger for me because I think we don't know if they're going to like that or not. Right. And so just trying to teach them to be really open around food and what they put in their body. And we talk a lot about like how food nourishes us and the life that it gives us. And I talk about my client, or I talk about that with my clients too, is what are you adding to your diet that can really bring you nourishment and help you feel like fulfilled and satisfied in a way. And it's not going to be the same for everyone. For everybody, it's different, and we have to experiment. And sure, there are guidelines that certain foods are going to support different hormones or different elements of our life more than other foods. But overall, it's really about like a whole picture and finding what is going to support you best.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a approach of individually looking at it, but also realizing how much it does affect you, and that it is something to consider. Especially, there's so many women who are struggling with getting pregnant. And I've known personally people and just clients as well who you can see very clearly that how much food has played a role in that, and how much the toxins in the environment and all of that, right? So when somebody's, you're working in that area for you personally, right? Like you had to look at nutrition for your journey. Like, yeah. What was it that really opened you up to realize, okay, there's some things that definitely create a conflict with your health and getting pregnant when it comes to food, when it comes to nutrition? Are there certain things that you see as just really important for people to take a look at?
I mean, I think overall, looking at your diet in general, like making sure that people think they're eating way more vegetables than most people ever are, which is kind of funny. And so, but also just kind of the standard American diet is not health supportive. And when I was trying to get pregnant, I was actually working as a pastry cook in restaurants here in the Bay Area. And so there was a lot of just extra sugar and flour kind of in my daily life that didn't support me and didn't support what I needed to do. And it's funny, on that journey and being pregnant, I really learned what foods supported me and what didn't. And sugar and flour were not foods that really supported me. And I mean, I talk to people about this all the time. Like, is that something that you have to take out forever? No. Is it something that I take out forever? No. But do I recognize how it makes me feel and how it's going to support me and my body and what I want to do with my body and the energy that I want to put into it and get out of it? Yes, definitely. And so, yeah, sugar and flour were kind of the two big ones that were part of my journey, just because of the nature of my job. I loved my job and I loved the creative aspect of it, but I didn't love really how it made me feel, or the kind of how what I was like, not pushing, but just like supporting, I guess, in terms of the grander scheme of things. And so if I talk to people now, a lot of it's about like, okay, what does your diet look like? And how can we add good nutritional food that's going to really support you? And then we also talk a lot about creating more space just energetically for you to bring a new human being into your space. A lot of women that I work with are so busy and they're very career focused, and they have a timeline and a path, and that's great. And I think that's wonderful. And I totally support that. And on top of that, we have to start to create some more space in your life to bring something new into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes there can be this perception that, you're going to continue your life and the child will just sort of get on board and just be a part of that, not realizing there's so much more involved with how you show up, and just not only the nourishment of like the food, but just the energetic environment, like your stress level and all that. Can you care for a human when you're under stress, when you're feeling pressure? So do you look at that area as well too, like beyond the food nutrition, or is it mostly just the food nutrition that you are focusing on when it comes to the fertility journey?
No, I mean, I am studied holistic nutrition, and so, or holistic health really. And so, yeah, I look at all the elements. We talk about lifestyle, we talk about stress management, we talk about sleep and what are your sleep patterns. We definitely talk about food, but that's one piece of nourishment for the whole body. And how are you moving your body right now? And is it something that you struggle with? And how can we find you something that brings you life? It doesn't have to be, I talked to a client last week and she was like, I just don't like running. And I said, you don't have to like running. That's totally fine. But we come up with stories in our head that things have to be a certain way. And so starting to kind of like think through and just listen to people is really a part of my work, and start to explore what are the other options. What are the other options around movement? And I have some different categories that I really focus on in terms of like what I just mentioned. And then we just explore in your life or in their life, what is going to work, for them. But I think it's the story that we tell ourselves that can hold us back sometimes from both nourishing ourselves and from stepping into what it's going to be like to become a new mom, right? Like if I had just kept telling myself a story about what this was going to look like, I would have been so frustrated and not appreciating what it actually looks like. And what it actually looks like is really beautiful. And I just have to like be in that place. And I can look at my girls and just be like, you are amazing. And you are two of the best things that ever happened to me. And would I have expected that this would be the journey, that this would be where I would be, or that they would be who they would be? No, because you can't predict those things.
Yeah.
Right?
I think what you just said was so important. I just want to emphasize it, that if you hold on to the story of what you think things should be like, you can create so much more pain and suffering than you need to. Whereas if you just look at what you have and how to appreciate that and feel the gift in that, right? It opens you up to so much more than you could have imagined. because we don't always know what's best for ourselves. Sometimes I think we can, you're like you said, you have these stories of what you think you are, and it kind of shrinks your experience. So that's really powerful. It's really beautiful. Alison, I think people will want to know more about the work you do and how to get in touch with you. So where can people find out more about you?
Sure. Yeah, I would love to talk to anyone who wants to learn more. So my website is AlisonClayshulte.com, and I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as Alison Clayshulte Nutritionist.
Great. And we'll include links. They'll be in the description somewhere on the page here, wherever you're watching this video or listening to the audio. And I'm so grateful just to have this time with you, Alison, and to hear more in depth about what you're doing and your passion for this wellness for moms and for families. Is there any final message that you'd like to share? Anything you'd like to leave us with before we close this conversation?
Yeah, no, thank you, Sarah, so much for inviting me to do this and to be part of this project that you're doing. I feel so blessed to have done it. And anything I want to share, I mean, just to be open to the possibility. It might not look like how you think it's going to look, and that's okay. It can be so much more beautiful than what's in your mind sometimes, and that can be a really good thing.
Mm. Thank you so much, Alison. And thank you everybody for listening, for being here, for Build Your Village, where this is really the intention to support you in raising your kids, raising consciousness and awareness of what it can look like to be a parent in the new paradigm. So all my blessings and love to you. Take care, and we'll see you next time.